Chapter 15. Time had no meaning for Flytaggart, the memory of being Flytaggart. He had no body but retained a consciousness somehow, somewhere. A sense of motion, but that might only be another memory. Remembering a hand created a hand. Remembering a foot resulted in the sensation of a foot, a painful sensation from where his ankle had been bruised. Memory of a backache condensed into a patch of flesh and blood that was a back. Memory of breath turned emptiness into a pair of lungs. Recollections of hot days on a summer beach left their imprint on a forehead slick with sweat. Then he had a whole body, floating in a warm current of air slowly cooling. An upside-down vertigo turning his stomach, which meant he had a stomach. The fall wasn't long, and he skinned his knees on a hard metal surface before falling forward on his face. The air was cold. He blinked eyes in an aching head. He couldn't see anything but white and red spots chasing each other across a field of darkness. The man panicked at the thought that he'd been blinded, but gradually vision returned. There wasn't much worth seeing. The light was dim. He wanted to breathe fresh air again, as he had before. Stepping on the platform, he'd been breathing the stale air of spaceships and the Mars station and the Phobos installations for so long he'd almost forgotten what fresh air was like. Even if it had been fake, he wanted it again. But when he filled his lungs, it was that disgusting sour lemon smell he had first noticed when he killed his first zombie. He was a man again, but he didn't want to be back in hell. Yet he had traveled somewhere, hadn't he? He felt he'd come a very long way just to reach. I didn't know where I was. Instinctively, I reached with my left hand for the machine pistol, the weapon I could most quickly bring into play. My hand slapped bare flesh. There was nothing on my chest but air. I looked down and saw that I was naked. Jesus and Mother Mary. And after all that work gathering shotgun, sig cow, and rocket launcher, having lost my clothes during the strange journey didn't bother me, except for the drop in temperature, but I didn't want to turn into dead meat because I didn't have weapons. A naked man is an unarmed man. I wasn't going to waste another second before reconnoitering. If there were monsters anywhere near here, then I had to get my hands on a firearm right away. The sour lemon smell was a dead giveaway. Zombies lurked somewhere in the shadows. I'd come through a gateway with nothing but my body, but at least I was breathing. I wanted to keep it that way. The gravity was Earth normal. As my eyes adjusted to dim light, I saw I was in an oblong, rectangular building. Having had the experience of being outside before the transfer, I didn't look forward to roaming corridors again. I almost hated that idea more than the prospect of fighting monsters. Suddenly it didn't feel merely cool any longer. It had gotten downright cold. Being stark naked presented other problems. With all the disgusting ways to die I had recently discovered, I'd be damned if I wanted to catch my death of cold. Adrenaline pumping madly, my drug of choice, I ran in the most promising direction. A red light pulsed dimly in the shadows directly ahead, and the flat, slapping sound of bare feet against the metal floor seemed almost as loud as my boots had earlier. If this setup were anything like the one I'd left, I actually wanted to find a zombie. Alive or dead, they were armed with what I needed, and a lot easier to deal with than the spinies or ghosts. I found the source of the red light. An entire wall emitted crimson illumination. At the bottom was an inverted cross cut out just big enough to serve as a doorway. It was directly in line with a square platform on the ground. The platform was red too. The symbolism was blasphemy. Anyone walking through the doorway would have the privilege of being crucified. The religious imagery was starting to piss me off. Whoever or whatever was behind this had learned things about human psychology that I preferred to not know. I slipped through, feeling dirty and corrupted. I felt an unholy chill as I walked through the inverted cross in the red wall, the color of communion wine, the color of blood from fallen comrades. How right I was to think of buddies lost in battle. Directly on the other side of the opening was the dead body of a UAC technician locked in mortal embrace with a soldier I recognized from Fox Company. I wasn't likely to forget. Ordover, the youngest kid in the outfit, we'd bagged on him something fierce. He was patriotic to the core, and easy to rag. As I looked at the remains of this Friendly private, the boyish face that hadn't been altered even in death. I regretted the times I'd helped get him drunk. Finding out that Johnny enjoyed singing old ballads, badly off key, when he was honed and capped was too much temptation. I thought that was as funny as everyone else did. Sorry, kid, I muttered to his corpse, relieved that at least he'd received the gift of a clean death. He hadn't been reworked. Now it was Johnny's turn to provide Fly Taggart with a piece of serious artillery. He was lying on top of a sig cow with a 50-round magazine. Thanks to him, I might still be a naked savage, but I was back in the game. First was a Marine once more. As I examined my surroundings, I had the feeling I'd been dropped into a giant warehouse. There were huge boxes, or crates, all over the place with UAC stenciled on them. I began to explore and noticed a red, glowing square that emitted a curious heat. I avoided it for the moment, welcome though the heat would be. Having gotten in the habit of following Arlene's arrows, I started hunting and looking for more weapons, as well as food, water, and an unbroken radio. I was so intent on all this that I barely noticed it when I turned a corner and was back in zombie country. I shouldered the rifle and fired while they wasted time roaring. The shot was good, the nearest head exploded like a ripe melon. That startled me. It was a single bullet, not a grenade. This zombie had to be especially ripe. The next one reacted more typically. The bullet made a normal hole and the creature fell to the floor, twitching. But I was already pounding around into the head of number 3, scudding sideways, firing 2 or 3 shots at a time. I lost count of how many zombies went down. A few had weapons, but none had taken a shot at me yet. It was all too easy. Then something on the other side returned fire, actual fire. The damned, brown spinies were back, complete with their bizarre ability to toss flaming snotballs like warm-up pitchers for the devil. The easy zombie pickings had made me careless. The first fireball was too close, far too close, to my face and neck. The stuff stuck to my skin like napalm, burning like hell and reminding me that I had no protection over any part of my skin or vulnerable parts. But I was pumped. With a roar to match a hell prince, I charged the nearest spiny and let my bayonet do the talking. The blade split thick neck like a cantaloupe, and the demon dropped, bleeding a deep, ruby red. But even with the bayonet stuck in its windpipe and blood pumping out in buckets, it stretched a clawed hand up toward me. With a thrust and a yank, I tore the neck so badly that the head was hanging lopsided. It would take a lot more work than that to actually decapitate the mother, but at least it wouldn't bother me anymore. I needed the bayonet back. I had other fields to plow. A number of zombies had gathered around as I was busy taking care of the demon that I hoped had been the one who burned my face. More spinies loitered by the weirdest piece of wall I'd seen yet, with human skulls stuck all over it like raisins in a cake. A thin female zombie went first, a fat male second, and XPFC third. I used the bayonet on all of them because there wasn't room to shoot. Pivoting, slashing and stabbing, shouting gleeful curses, this was the way to kill. The feel, the smell, the blood pouring out of them beating through my veins, all linked. A world of blood. Some had to be mine, but this was no time to worry over details. Then there was one zombie left. I recognized its face. Recognition slowed me down. This was a good face, honest and stern, like the men who'd settled the frontier. Corporal Ryan. Dead eyes in a face I once respected were an invitation to do more than kill. I had to erase him from the universe. I pinned him with the bayonet. But he was made of stern stuff, even as a zombie. Squirming forward, he clawed my face with long, dirty nails. Damned rifle was stuck in him. He was far stronger than the others, stronger than me. Thank God I knew Ryan better than his reanimated corpse did. The corporal always carried a 10mm pistol in a back-draw holster. I reached behind him. The gun was there. I drew the piece, stuck the business end in Ryan's mouth, and squeezed the trigger. His death grip combined with the pool of blood underfoot pulled me to the floor. It was too slippery to get up easily. While I freed myself, I tried real hard to assimilate the latest data. If zombies were holding a weapon when they died, they still used it. But the intelligence required to remember a hidden weapon was beyond their reach. Slipping and sliding on the blood was distracting, and then I realized that I Was sobbing. Having given myself strict orders to keep emotions under control, I felt betrayed. At least I held on to the pistol. Standing up, I realized with disgust that the real reason I was weeping was because I had temporarily run out of enemy. All the zombies were dead, and the monsters who had been watching over by the wall of skulls had run off. This was worse than being interrupted in the middle of making love. I really felt that I had good reason to be crying like a baby. Pull yourself together, I ordered yours truly. I mean it. Cut the crap right now. I wasn't going to put up with any insubordination. Damn you all, I screamed at the universe. How long am I supposed to take this over and over? It was a good question, but nobody had any answers. I kicked a zombie's head, angry that he wasn't contributing his part to the conversation. Zombies weren't the only inanimate objects around. I found a metal cabinet that I tore off and flung at a console. Great sound effect. I would have moved on in search of glass to break, an even better sound, but I noticed my little tantrum had actually led to something useful. As the forest fire raging in my brain toned down to a mild fever delirium, I vowed never to say anything bad about dumb luck again. A hidden drawer in the console sprang open. I investigated, hoping to find a weapon. Instead, I found another of those computer key cards, the very same cards I had sworn not to use again while I had my trusty rockets, the very same rockets I no longer had. Buck Rogers, back to square one. I picked up the translucent blue computer disc. Waste not, want not. A rifle in one hand, pistol in the other, and a key card clenched in my teeth. Not having pockets was becoming a major pain in the butt. Why didn't I simply field strip a corpse? I don't know, I guess my brain wasn't rolling on all tank treads. One direction seemed as good or bad as any other, so I went back the way I had come. As the frenzy of the battle wore off, I was starting to feel cold again. The red platform was appealing as the only source of heat I knew about around here, the next best thing to a roaring fireplace. It felt great as the heat warmed my cold, naked skin. Then, as idiots have asked themselves throughout history, I asked the magic words, why not, and rubbed my hands over the thing. A million flashbulbs exploded in my face. By the time I finished blinking the world back into focus, I realized I was not in the room I just had been. My mouth dropped open. Fly, you Gorm, I thought, I think you've just discovered your first teleporter. That square, red platform just had to be the teleport pads I had heard about when they posted Fox Company to Mars. They were just big enough for a man to stand on, assuming he felt adventurous. I was dubious about the whole thing from day one, and so was Gunny. Go forth. If I were surrounded by trolls and out of ammo, I decided I might try. Nothing short of that would tempt me. The teleport pads were already there when humans first arrived, presumably built the same time as the gates and gravity generators. Practical folk that we are, we incorporated them into the design of the base. UAC used them to transport heavy ingots and equipment. I don't think many people used them. Most of us worried about things like souls and continuity of consciousness and all that crap. Trust Corporal Fly Taggart to render the whole philosophical discussion moot by tripping over his own feet into it. As I stared stupidly at my new surroundings, a swarm of zombies poured around the corner. As the first one fired a round that took me in the shoulder, several thoughts whizzed through my mind. First, as I fell to the floor, I thought of writing up the careless dolt who'd triggered a teleporter by sticking his paws where they weren't supposed to be. The second thought, as I rolled onto my back, was more ironic. Moments before, I'd been unhappy over running out of zombies. My third thought, as I sat up, stunned, was, I'm shot. My sig cow was out of reach. I'd let go of it, along with the keycard. I opened fire with the 10mm. A nearby stone platform provided me cover. The zombies were too stupid to do the same. They reminded me of army privates. Taking my time about it, I aimed and fired. The bullets went in, the blood came out. I took them one by one, killing the very last at point blank range. This time I wasn't sorry I'd run out of zombies. The bullet in my shoulder made me groggy. There was nothing I'd rather do at that moment than lie down in a nice, warm pool of blood and sleep forever. Nothing suicidal, sleep was good. Rest was a sacrament. Willing my reluctant body to move, I got up.